is cold call dying right now in the market? Is that true? Or like, is there any kind of, skills problem that the people have? They just want to cover it up.
Cold calling is alive and well, right? Cold calling is definitely not dead. In fact, if you have the last 5 days of a month, for example, to meet your target, the best and most efficient way of getting there is obviously through cold calls. Bad cold calling doesn't work anymore.
You have been elected for the top SDR under 30 in 2022, right? So what are the specific learnings that you have made before, getting this title, or what was your journey? If you can just, give a brief walkthrough of this.
It was rubbish in my first job straight out of college. When I joined Slintel, I was working amongst a team of BDRs, Karan, who absolutely wiped the floor with me every day of the week. I remember I used to sit over weekends trying to devise some sort of plan or strategy to actually get in shape and, start making sure that I'm able to compete with these guys.
What kind of learnings that you have made during, before starting Samaschool, right? That you felt that you want to start something like Samaschool, where you want to train as just like do you want to help people in the sales? So what was the turning point, and what was your thinking before starting it?
Yeah, I think kind of talking about the early stages, I think Samaschool was definitely pre-existing to me. But it's something that I kind of built up into my own sort of business and really, really enjoyed the process of doing that. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people are in this business now for maybe the wrong reasons.
What is the training process? How do you decide these people will go for the cohort? What is the, after the selection, what is the, process of getting them upskill and everything?
You work with people you want to work with. You also work with people that you can get an outcome for. The biggest reason, Karan, that companies do not want to hire certain reps from certain industries is comm skills.
To understand, total number of students that get placed in companies from you, and what is the average package for them, and what is the top highest package that we have achieved so far from your school? When it comes to Indian market, a lot of people we see that can achieve that can crack this market, right? But when it especially comes to US market or international market, a lot of people struggle. I just want to help up someone who's coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities, not from the top tier colleges, wants to enter into sales, right? How they can upskill themselves? Is there kind of resources out there, or the basics of sales they should learn before entering into even getting into a job or even applying for one? Top 3 books that Ryan should suggest to every student who is trying to enter into sales. Everyone, welcome to the new episode of Success Secrets. आज का ये एपिसोड बहुत खास होने वाला है बिकॉज आज के जो हमारे गेस्ट हैं उन्होंने 1000 से भी ज़्यादा बच्चों को उनकी ड्रीम जॉब दिलाने में मदद करी है। इफ़ यू आर समवन हु इज़ लुकिंग फॉर जॉब, हु इज़ लुकिंग टू अपस्किल देमसेल्फ, प्लीज़ इस पॉडकास्ट को पूरा सुने और प्लीज़ हमारे इस चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें ताकि हम ऐसे सक्सेस के सीक्रेट्स आपके लिए और लेके आ पाएँ। Cool. So first of all, welcome to Success Secrets, Ryan, and thank you so much for joining us. Just to begin with, if you can just help us with your brief introduction about yourself. आप क्या करते हैं, आपने क्या करा है, so our audience could get a context of this conversation. So yeah, go to it.
Yeah, of course. My name is Ryan Aneja. I have been in the SaaS industry my entire career. Since seeing a bit of success as both an SDR and an SDR leader, wanted to see how I could compound that as much as possible. I've been a part of the SDR training space for the last 2.5 years, started the initial company that went on to define the space. And now I've joined hands with the School of SDR to further build and consolidate the SDR training space in India for the world.
Understood. Cool. Thank you so much for this. The first question then, Ryan, when I look at your profile, I want to ask is, because I'm also a salesperson, like, there's a very trendy question in the market, like, is cold call dying right now in the market? Is that true? Or like, is there any kind of, skills problem that the people have? They just want to cover it up under this tag, like there is a problem in cold calling, it's really dying. So what is the truth behind it?
Cold calling is alive and well, right? Cold calling is definitely not dead. In fact, if you have the last 5 days of a month, for example, to meet your target, the best and most efficient way of getting there is obviously through cold calls, right? People do pick up their phones. Now, what I will caveat that is with the fact that bad cold calling doesn't work anymore, right? I'm sure every day we all receive calls from, not to name any banks, but ICICI Bank or Axis Bank or any of them, to offer us credit cards, right? That's a very poor type of cold call done in a very bad way. They use scripts. The same script is used for everybody. There's no real personalization involved, right? But like anything, there are levels to this game, right? Now, with cold calling, again, there are levels to it, and the bottom level cold callers are going to be replaced by AI, right? I believe that that standard of cold calling is definitely dead. But if you're looking into, let's say, selling enterprise or selling to SMBs, you're definitely going to need to have a very, very strong cold calling weapon in your arsenal in order to actually make it as a long term career in sales. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. You said like this kind of the people who are using script, that cold calling, the kind of credit card selling calls that we're receiving, that will be dead,
Yeah.
right? So I just want to understand, is there any kind of framework, when it's come to B2B SaaS selling? Is there kind of a certain things, or a kind of activity that a person should keep in mind? Are there any kind of practices they should do before starting into cold calling? Is there any kind of these things available for people?
Yeah, I think I don't know why, but when we take cold calls, we switch off our brains sometimes, right? And we tend to rely on a script too much. At the end of the day, because it is a person on the other end of that, you're never going to be able to rely 100% on the script. A script is basically I say this, you say that, I say this, you say that, right? It'll never work like that ever, right? So the idea is you got to get really good at having conversations, getting really good at peeling the onion and asking the right questions, because ultimately, in my opinion, that's what selling is, right? Asking the right questions. So, yeah, I think when it comes to cold calling too, it's really, really important that we are good at conversationalists, right? We're able to portray ourselves as an expert in our field, somebody that different people would want to actually listen to or learn from, and then go ahead and try and ascertain, hey, is there even a need in the first place? The reason people don't like taking cold calls is because they're being sold on something, right? Be it a credit card, be it a course, be it whatever, right? Now, if you can actually take a cold call in a different way and say, hey, maybe this is a challenge you might be facing. I'm not sure, again, if you are, that's the reason I made this call. But in case you are, I might have a solution to that unless you've already figured something out internally. Our job as salespeople is not to sell to everybody. The second you try to sell to everybody, you sell to nobody, right? It's very important to make sure that we really understand our market, our personas, our ICP, as well as the problems we can potentially solve. Otherwise, we're just firing in the dark, right? Hoping to hit something, right? Spray and pray is what it's called. And that generally doesn't work out anymore, right? So, like I said, levels to this game, and it's important that you're able to hold and sustain a conversation and come across as somebody who's there to help and not sell, and somebody who's also going to cross the divide. And I like to use this example. Instead of you and me sitting across the table from each other as a buyer and as a seller, um, isn't it so much easier if I cross the table and become an assistant buyer for you, right? And then we focus on solving just the problem that way. Otherwise, there's so many different mind games that are involved, and we're just jumping through mental hoops together and actually getting nowhere, right? So the broader idea here is let's try and see how we can become an assistant buyer, get really good at having conversations that peel the onion, and really understand what are the specific issues facing XYZ company or XYZ person today that we could potentially solve.
Understood. Understood. I would like to understand one thing. I've seen your profile, like you have been elected for the top SDR under 30 in 2022, right? So, what are the specific learnings that you have made before, getting this title, or what was your journey? If you can just, give a brief walkthrough of this.
Yeah. See, look, I think before the title, everybody just sees the title, right? But if you go a little bit back, I'll level with you. I was rubbish in my first job straight out of college. Genuinely was not very good at it. Didn't feel the spark. Didn't feel the passion. Maybe it was the product. Maybe it was me, right? But in my second company, when I joined Slintel, I was working amongst a team of BDRs, Karan, who absolutely wiped the floor with me every day of the week. They were just that good, right? People like Michael Shane, Shafali Jain, Kazi Akram, Kiran Edgar, right? An amazing, amazing, amazing team. And these guys were straight up killers, right? If you were even slightly behind on your quota, they're going to beat you to the spiffs, right? I remember I used to sit over weekends trying to devise some sort of plan or strategy to actually get in shape and start making sure that I'm able to compete with these guys. And as I started doing that and deep diving into, okay, I can't control what they do, but I can control what I do. That's when I started kind of changing a lot. So I started changing the way, for example, I write email, right? And I used to be able to book my entire quota just via email. Then I would go a little bit above and beyond, maybe make some calls. In addition to that, I thought, okay, what's something that crazy Ryan can do that maybe some of the other reps may not want to do? So I used to pull out my guitar, I used to sing to prospects, Bear in mind, not a singer, not a guitar player, not very good at either, right? But the whole point is funny, right? I want people to laugh. I want people to enjoy it and be like, that's different, that's new, right? So I think when I started doing that, that's when I realized that, hey, this is actually something I'm good at. And that's when I started excelling, right? The 30 under 30 title could have honestly been given to just about anybody and everybody inside that team. Notably, about 10% of the entire list did come from Slintel, as rightfully it should. The rep team was just absolutely fantastic there. But once I got that title, Karan, what I genuinely believe is that it wasn't something innately given to me, right? It was something that anybody could do if they wanted to, right? Now, what I figured out was certain things that I could boil down and start training people in order to figure out, okay, is this something that is actually applicable on a larger scale, right? So then I became a manager. I hired 2 or 3 reps of my own and started training them up using these methodologies that I developed. Everything started working out really well. They started becoming the top performers immediately. And that was my like Yahtzee moment when I knew that, okay, I'm on to something. Then, of course, started the schools. And yeah, the rest is history, I suppose, as they say.
Understood, understood. What do you think? I'm getting into this, like, the journey of starting this summer school, right? But before that, I would just want to understand, what kind of learnings that you have made during, before starting summer school, right? That you felt that you want to start something like summer school, where you want to train as just like do you want to help people in the sales? So, what was the turning point, and what was your thinking before starting it? So, if you can just help
Yeah.
us with that.
So I'll be honest, man. I didn't start Sama School, right? Sama School kind of found me as a result of the 30 under 30 list. The founder at the time, his name was Bunch. And he did, just sort of see, okay, hey, there's a lot of these 30 under 30s out there. Can I get one of them to maybe teach, right? Before that, he was kind of running their own cohort business, but really wasn't doing that well in terms of the outcomes that they were able to deliver. Then when I sort of came aboard, I revamped their entire curriculum. I started figuring out very simple areas where they were going wrong. And I believe that when you're doing a cohort program, especially for SDRs, certain things you have to do first is rebuild the foundation. A lot of people come in with their own idea of what selling is, and it may or may not be a good thing, right? Now, what I'd like to do is just take that, put it all to one side. Maybe it'll help you, maybe it won't. We'll figure that out later, right? I want to rebuild your foundation from square one, from brick number one, and then see where we get. Post that is when we actually build something on top of it, right? So we try and teach reps things that most SDRs today are not doing. For example, things like video selling. For example, things like using memes, GIFs, funny cat videos, right? All of the above in their outreaches, right? Using voice notes on LinkedIn, right? So just standing out there a little bit more, because at the end of the day, you are competing for a CXO's attention. And to do that, you got to stand out, right? And I think if you're a bit timid with it, let's say, and you're like, hey, you know what, I don't really want to stand out. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. You're probably not going to make that great of a rep, right? The best reps have one thing in common that I know is that they don't care what people think. They're very, very happy to even look a bit silly, but they'll try a bunch of things that could potentially work, as well as things that they just have brewing around, right? And eventually, through the process of A/B testing, they're able to eventually figure out a kind of formula that works for them, right? And then, of course, reverse engineering that formula to figure out, okay, I have X number of days. I need to do X number of activities in order to hit my targets, right? So that's kind of something that I saw with the best reps. But yeah, I think kind of talking about the early stages, I think Sama School was definitely pre-existing to me. But it's something that I kind of built up into my own sort of business and really, really enjoyed the process of doing that. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people are in this business now for maybe the wrong reasons. For me, it's genuinely a passion of mine. I've said it often. I will run the next 10,000 years as long as I'm alive. I will run cohorts. Very, very happy to do so. In addition to that, this is a passion for me. If I have 10 students, 50 students, or one student, my energy level on the call stays the same. I genuinely feel very, very passionate about this. And I believe that it's my job to create the next level top 30 reps in the country every year.
Understood. See, if someone wants to join your gang of sales people, right? If someone wants to get enrolled with Samaschool School of SDR, which is now known as School of SDR, what is the training process? How do you decide these people will go for the cohort? What is the, after the selection? What is the process of getting them upscale and everything? So if you can just help us with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, I think because you're running this as your own business, the idea is you work with people you want to work with. You also work with people that you can get an outcome for. The biggest reason, Karan, that companies do not want to hire certain reps from certain industries is comm skills, right? If people come to me with very, very poor comm skills, a lot of mother tongue influence, I genuinely cannot work with them, right? I'm looking for people who are A, coachable, B, can communicate well, and C, don't come with any of this baggage of, no, I can't do this, I don't want to do that type thing. I want to have straight up killers, right? And in order to do that, these guys are going to have to kind of shed all of these preconceived notions of this is the way I want to have my success. It's like in sales, it's very binary. Either you hit your target or you miss your target, right? So success can be quantified very, very quickly and very, very easily. So the students that I work with are of that caliber, right? And again, that's why companies hire from us. I think very recently, and in fact, probably as this podcast goes out, I would have shared a post on my LinkedIn about all the different companies that have hired reps from both my school as well as School of SDR. And you could just see the names on that list, right? And bear in mind, that's not even a comprehensive, complete list, right? We have another maybe 15, 20 companies that we could definitely add to that. But the idea is, look, companies are only going to pay for value, right? If you're able to actually deliver value to these companies, help them with their outbound, and really devote some time into helping them create a top class rep who can then go on to be their account executive or CS manager, or maybe somebody who's an SDR leader. That's the long-term goal of it, right? So again, coming back to the curriculum, what we make sure we do is, like I said, first fundamentals, then we build the foundation on top and everything else. So we start with identifying ICP, right? Can you understand what is a buying committee? Who are you selling to? Who are the competitors, right? Can you build lookalikes of the companies that you're selling to, right? Can you understand how decisions are made in organizations? Now, once we've understood who is the org that we're selling to and which person in the org, or persons in most cases, that we're selling to within the org, then the question becomes a lot about outreach, right? So what channel are we going to use to outreach them? Is it going to be a video? Is it going to be a phone call? Is it going to be an email? Is it going to be a message on LinkedIn or a community, right? And then again, the way you message on LinkedIn can't be the same as the way you message on email, right? You get one brand new shot to message the same prospect. You're sending them the same email that they never responded to, but sending it on LinkedIn, it's like, recipe for disaster. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And you can also almost see that replicated in the SDR space as well, where people are like, okay, this messaging helped me hit my target 2 weeks ago, or 2 months ago, or 2 quarters ago. I'm still going to use it for next quarter. And it's like, no, what got you here is not going to get you there, right? And then we go on top of it to make sure these guys are interview trained. Most interviewees are very, very poor at that. They directly say, my name is Ryan, which we already know because you're on the call. But then they go ahead with some sort of explanation about themselves, let's say, that you could easily find in their resume. The whole point is to come across as a person, right? At the end of the day, one thing that I'd like the viewers of this to take away is that people buy from people, right? And the same thing is true when you're in an interview, right? If you're coming across as somebody who's really personable, somebody who's great at communication, and just somebody who's a joy to be around, companies are therefore more likely to hire you if you come across as all of these things, right? And it's a very, very simple coaching that we do. It takes me about 30 minutes. I do it as a one-on-one with each of my students. And there's a marked difference in the way that these guys perform on interviews before and after, right? And to be honest, I don't really mind whether they're interviewing for SDR roles alone or other roles as well. It'll work for you no matter what, right? You can be interviewing for an HR role, but if you use a good interviewing technique, obviously your chances improve a lot, right? So we take them end to end from complete the SDR function, whatever they're going to have to do, as well as help them to plan out their career, the next steps over there, everything, including the handover and how they should do that for the account executives, as well as just how to max out as an SDR. So we make sure all of this is included. And then again, of course, we make introductions with them with a big, big list of companies that we do work for. And in addition to that, we also make sure that we match make. A lot of companies do an AI-based matchmaking. I believe some things are better left to the people, right? So we do it on a person-to-person basis. We have somebody who's been doing it at School of SDR for the last 6 months, and he does a great job with making sure that the right reps end up in the right homes, i.e. with the right companies, and they're really able to add a lot of value. So we've never actually had a company come to us saying, hey, the rep you've given us has not worked out. Never once over the last 2 years. And I think that's something I'm quite proud of.
Understood. Yeah, that's really great. But from this, I want to understand, total number of students that get like placed in companies from you, and what is the average package for them, and what is the top highest package that we have achieved so far from your school?
Yeah. So Given that now I'm a part of School of SDR, I'm going to combine the numbers from my previous school, given that's what I was running before. We've trained over 1,000 reps till now, right?
Okay.
Now, our placement record for both schools is around 80% after the first month. And within the next 3 or 4 months, everybody sort of is able to land a role. This is either by their own applications or either with introductions that we make. We actually don't discourage students from applying to companies because, look, at the end of the day, there's tens of thousands of SaaS companies in India. I work with about 80 of them, right?
Um,
So if you're playing the numbers game at the end of the day, you probably would want to make sure you're applying on your own as well. When it comes to packages, even a fresher can sort of expect 8 to 9 lakh base plus 4 lakhs in terms of incentives. Our average packages are from maybe 14 to 16 lakhs, again, including incentives. And my top placements, I have maybe a handful of them. And I don't want the viewers to think that this happens for everybody. But my top placements have been 22 lakhs, 25 lakhs, and 21 and a half, I think. So we do have a couple of people within those brackets as well. But yeah, historically, we do quite well with different companies. We also make sure that, even if it's your first time breaking into SaaS, as long as you're able to learn the skill set from us, just because you're going to be a fresher to a new industry, need not mean that you take a huge pay cut. Now, I do understand that there's a lot of people already north of 20 lakhs, but at the end of the day, it's like you can make that back in SaaS very, very quickly. Now, at the same time, if you're very happy earning what you're earning and you want to stay in your industry, we do not begrudge anybody, right? Everybody's, paths are different. Not everybody needs to be a SaaS SDR, right? People have their own interests, uniquely, of course. And I think it's very, very important we understand that as well.
Understood. Understood. I just this question just popped into mind. Like, when it comes to Indian market, a lot of people we see that can achieve that can crack this market, right? But when it especially comes to US market or international market, a lot of people struggles with that. So, is there any kind of skill problem, or do you think is it a general observation, or there's a market standards that you have seen? So, what is your take on this?
See, I think, look, it's obviously different when you're selling internationally versus selling domestically. Again, this is just my opinion. I believe it is actually easier to sell internationally than it is to sell domestically. I've always found that to be the case. Now, the things you have to notice are culturally, the way people buy internationally is a little bit different to the way people buy in India, let's say, right? So as a result, we kind of have to understand the way that they would prioritize certain things and the way that they would like to enter, let's say, a buying cycle. So we have to understand that and then cater to that. At the same time, the US guys are really happy to, engage in a bit of small talk, let's say, for example, before the demo. They're very receptive to trying out new technologies. And once they do see a lot of value, they're very happy to try it out. Versus the India market, where no matter what you do and how much value you bring, people are always happy to bargain. I think another thing which is very, very true with the US market is you have to be a good communicator, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you have to speak like Shashi Tharoor, for example. I like using that example, but you don't have to speak like him, right? You just have to be, articulate with what you're saying. You have to make sure that the other person on the other end can actually feel though as though you're an expert and you're able to actually solve, a need or problem that they're facing. Other than that, I think those are core sales fundamentals which will apply through SaaS, through automotive, through real estate, and pretty much anything you can think of selling. It's just people buy from people and have a great conversation, peel the onion a bit more, understand that money follows pain. And if you can get into their pain points, chances are you can get into the account as well.
Understood. Understood. I just want to understand this thing, like, a youngster, because I come from a tier three city from Punjab, right? When I was trying to enter into this industry, I was not having any kind of, exposure to this. I don't know this and that about industry.
Yeah.
I just want to help up someone who's coming from tier two, tier three cities, not from the top tier colleges, wants to enter into sales, right? How they can upskill themselves? Is there kind of resources out there, or the basics of sales they should learn before entering into even getting into a job or applying for one?
Yeah, of course. Look, I think from especially if you're talking about the different tiers of cities in India, I think you got to be really careful with accepting your first role, right? A lot of people end up in the ed tech industry, and one of the biggest reasons that we see companies don't want to hire other than comms is because somebody has an ed tech background, right? I'm not going to name the company, but it rhymes with buy and ends with Jews, and people really don't want reps that come from there, just because the training program that they do over the course of 1 week, and I've seen that training program, it's garbage, right? It's just designed to say, you know what, Karan, you're a farmer. If you want your son to be a farmer, then don't buy my course. Otherwise, buy my course. And it's like, okay, are you going to sell a car that way? Are you going to sell a house that way? Are you going to sell pretty much anything else that way, right? I get it. Education in India is a pre-sold concept, excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's like you have to understand, is there a pain point that you can actually dive into and maybe see if you can solve, right? Then the person on the other end is not just going to be talked into buying something from you. You're actually solving something for them. A, it's a far more ethical way of selling. B, it's way more sustainable, right? So that's another issue that we see. So I would say, look, first jobs are very, very important. Making sure that you're not picking something straight in the ed tech domain. Maybe pick something. And by the way, I want to caveat that by saying there are good ed tech companies out there, right? But just obviously not the one I've mentioned. And of course, you have to be very, very careful by just looking, oh my God, I can earn a sales thing. There's incentive, there's base. Great, I'm making two salaries. Be a little bit careful with that, because that could be like, the golden handcuffs that sort of keep you shackled for a long period of time. We speak with a lot of ed tech professionals. And in fact, one of the main reasons we have School of SDR today is to cater to a lot of people who are stuck in their domains, and they're just not able to get through an ATS or an applications round just because of the fact that they've worked in a place like EdTech, right? The second most important thing that I would say, and again, of equal importance, of course, would be the comm skills, right? So if you have a great comm skills, you're willing to learn, and you're able to be very, very articulate, you can learn how to figure out how to sell a product. You can also learn different selling techniques, right? Back when I was an SDR, I didn't really have a lot of this sort of schools and everything like that. I had to figure things out for myself. And as a result, I think that makes you a bit self-sustained as well. And there's so much good free content out there as well, right? Schools like mine just consolidated in one place. Of course, we have exceptional mentors and leaders that can, of course, make sure that the learnings are actually attained as they should be. But at the end of the day, if you're somebody who just can't afford it, or there's a budgetary constraint, yeah, there's so much free knowledge out there that you can use and start implementing, and just making sure that you're constantly practicing. Because look, at the end of the day, I use this analogy where it's like the sales muscle is that it is a muscle, right? At the end of the day, you can either work on it and build it up to be very big and strong, or you can let it atrophy and just die, right? So the idea would be, of course, practice a lot as well. So comms practice, and don't sort of jump into the first type of sales job you see. Really make sure you research a lot, because once in ed tech, I don't want you to be stuck always in ed tech.
Understood. Understood. Ryan, right now we're just about to enter 2025, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, top 5 tools that a salesperson should learn before, because it's the time right now is the AI, AI driven salespeople are going after that. So what do you think the top 5 tools a salesperson should learn right now to cope up with that kind of movement, right? In the 2025?
Yeah. So, I mean, just to answer your question, I will probably name some tools in a second. But I think the bigger demand over here is SDRs who actually know how to sell on instincts as opposed to using AI, right? I meet a lot of people, and I, of course, help them out with constructing, let's say, emails or making good cold calls. And the idea is you can't just rely on an AI for it, because eventually that's what's going to replace you. But SDRs or salespeople in general who have really good selling instincts, those are people who are genuinely going to make it quite far, right? And of course, there are tools that can help you out along the way, but I believe you should still always be able to craft your own email without, for example, a chat GPT. Please don't use that for writing emails. LLMs do not work for writing good emails. I use a tool called Lavender. I'm really big fan of that tool. Excellent tool with respect to writing emails. It lives in your Gmail, and it'll give you, different ways you can make things shorter. It'll give you the tonality, reading time, writing time. Super helpful kind of co-pilot. I think another really powerful tool that's come across in the last maybe 8 months is called Clay. Clay is an absolutely beautiful tool. I think that's going to be the next big game changer, as long as you use it correctly. Like now, instead of spray and pray, a lot of companies are going clay and pray, right? And just hoping that the lists that they build and all of the different prompts that they've engineered into it are working. It is a lot more challenging than it sounds, but it's a great tool for an SDR. For example, I used to list build when I was an SDR. If I had Clay, I could do what would take me a week in probably less than half an hour, right? And I could spend all of that additional time selling, right? So if I was an SDR and I had Clay, I would be excellent with it. I would be, of course, hitting a lot more quota than I did. But at the end of the day, I think that's a super powerful tool. I think let's not overestimate the power of simple tools as well, especially when you're writing out a lot of different emails and very, very crafted emails as well. We can get certain things wrong grammatically as well. I think Grammarly comes into play as well there. And even if we don't think we need it, we should probably still use it. I'm a big fan of video selling tools, so I use Vidyard personally. There is Loom, there's Tolstoy, there's a bunch of different video platforms out there. GAN as well, which is another video platform. But for me, I've always just stuck to the very basics of, I want to know what my CRM is, I want to know what my SEP is, and I'll just sort of figure out how to use those things, right? Now, if AI can make me more efficient, great. But at the end of the day, I have to be the one controlling the AI, not the other way around. So having reps that sort of think for themselves and they're not just over reliant on I believe is the key to actually having reps in the long run. Otherwise, might as well we just, hire some AI SDRs, which are actually a thing today.
Understood. Understood. I just, got this thought when I open LinkedIn, I see a lot of sales leaders, who just post about this thing. This is a template from which I got 500 meetings. I got this, I got that. Do you think that thing actually works? Because I have seen a lot of, people following those templates. But what is your take on this?
Yeah, look, I think it's all everything is contextual, right? I don't want to say that any of them are dishonest because I would rather give them the benefit of doubt as opposed to, casting some kind of aspersion as to maybe they haven't done it, right? But let's just say, and for this purpose of this discussion, that all of those templates that they have worked, right? Um, we also have to understand it worked for them very specifically in a specific context as well. Maybe they were selling some, specific type of tool to a specific type of audience, right? So if somebody says, "Hey, this is an email template that generated me 100 meetings," it's like, great. Which markets were you selling to? What were the buying personas within those companies? Were all of those meetings that eventually got booked, were they 100% qualified? What was the conversion rate of meetings to close, right? So I think, yes, at face value, in some cases, maybe you shouldn't take these, to be, God's truth. But at the same time, I think that they're very useful to give you a lot of different, let's say, inspiration, right? I love, sort of just, they say comment email and I'll send you the email. I'm very happy to comment email because then when I look at that email, I'm like, okay, either I like it or I don't like it. If I don't like it, I'll figure out a way that I can make it into an email that I would like. And then I'm gifted myself essentially a new template. And if it is, of course, something that works straight out of the box, I'm happy to just tweak it, put it in my own words, make it in my own way of selling, and then, start using it. But again, like I said earlier, I think it's very, very important for SDRs to understand that the power that they hold is the ability to think, right? If you're able to think for yourself without sort of relying on any AIs or any guides or any easy button fixes, I think that's far more useful because look, at the end of the day, sales is a very, very tough space to be in, right? You either hit your target or you miss your target. It's not like, there's any gray area, right? It's very black and white. So I think as a result, it's very, very important for reps to be able to, like I said, think for themselves and use these tools to help them, onto their targets without depending on them solely or 100% for hitting them.
Understood. Understood. I just want to understand one thing as well, right? How important is this for a salesperson to build their personal brand on LinkedIn, on social media handles? Is there any kind of, like thing that helps to actually people to close deals faster or to get the leads? Is there a kind of, is it true or not? What is your take on this?
Yeah, so I've met a lot of people who, fundamentally sell a lot on LinkedIn as well, and that's where they book most of their meetings. I think it takes a certain type of person to want to build a really big brand on LinkedIn and, leverage that, of course. I think that with sales, it's a tiny bit different. Of course, having a brand is not going to hurt you, unless you're saying some really atrocious things. But let's assume, for the point of this discussion, that you're posting some really meaningful stuff and you're helping out a community. Great. I think that there is something in sales that I call MVC, which is minimum viable connectability on LinkedIn, right? And as long as you don't look like a psychopath and you have some kind of credibility on LinkedIn, where people can look at your profile and say, okay, that's a nice profile picture, he has some experience, a little bit of a write-up, nice cover photo, all of these kind of things. And it's very, very neatly organized so that people can kind of understand a little bit about you even before they speak with you or interact with you. I think that's really important for salespeople. So building up your LinkedIn, making sure that your URL is not this messy bunch of numbers, making sure that you're somebody who looks like is going to be friendly and personable, and people are going to want to connect with you. And of course, demonstrating a little bit more just beyond, this is the company I worked in for this long. Write a little bit about which company you've worked in. Write about, how long you worked there and, what you achieved in this company. What are your things you're proud of? What are the different metrics behind your, tenure in that company? I think these are all really important. They help people really understand you a lot better. I don't believe, though, everybody needs to have a massive brand on LinkedIn in order to sell. it obviously doesn't help. I mean, it obviously doesn't hurt, excuse me. But at the end of the day, I do believe that, you should have that minimum viable credibility on LinkedIn where people are still happy to connect with you.
Understood. Understood. Cool. I have this question in my mind. When startup just start, like getting into the market, they want to, get customers. They usually struggle with their first 10 customers, right? So is there any kind of, like template, or is there kind of cheat code they can use to, crack the first 10 customers, because they don't have any kind of customer success stories behind them, right? And any kind of big brands from them they can refer to. So is there any kind of like specific things that you want to tell our audience who are running their startups or struggling with that? How can they, get their first 10 customers when it comes to sales?
Yeah, look, honestly, I may not be the right person to give you this feedback, but I'll just give you my take. At the end of the day, look, founders try for a very long period of time to achieve what is called PMF, right? Product market fit. Now, understanding that they would have built their products with some sort of, pain point or some sort of issue that they're trying to solve, it's not always easy again to get it to market, right? I think there's two buckets, let's call it, of people. There's builders and there's sellers. And very rarely you see people who can do both, right? For example, I can't build software at all. I know how to sell it, but I couldn't build anything, right? Can't code, can't do anything, right? So I think, look, we also have to understand what our shortcomings are and what we're actually good at. I think the best way to do it is by running initial pilots with, different companies where, you're figuring out the product, of course, with the first 10 customers as well, maybe building out something custom for them as well. And just trying to get your product to that MVP, right? And then try and see, okay, can we actually build on this a little bit further? Once you have those first couple of customers, and however you get them doesn't really matter, but as long as you're able to, let's say, get your first couple of customers, what's then important is, okay, I have 10 customers. Can I build a lookalike account list of all of these 10 customers and find other companies that are, let's say, of a similar size, maybe selling to a similar market, maybe they're using similar type of tech stack, whatever it may be, right? And then building a lookalike list that you can then target, saying, hey, I solved this for person A. I noticed that you're in the same category as them. This is how we solved something for them. This is the result of how we solved it for them. Is this something you'd even be interested in chatting about, right? And just leave it out there, right? I think the best thing that founders do is they do a lot of networking, right? So making sure that they're networking very consistently with a lot of different folks who can actually, A, help them to propel their product forward, and B, of course, maybe potentially they can even sell their product to these guys as well. So yeah, I think, look, if I could tell you how to get the first 10 customers as like a cheat sheet, or, this is the definite way you can get 10 customers, I'm the wrong guy. I genuinely don't know how to do that. But if I had to do it, I would look for, what is the biggest pain that I'm solving today? Who's the biggest, recipient of that pain right now? And is this even a fit for something like that, right? For example, if I'm trying to solve, let's say, an SMB problem with an enterprise level solution, it's like, it's like hitting a nail with a sledgehammer, right? It's overkill, right? At the same time, if you're selling to enterprise and, using an SMB tool, it's not going to be enough, right? So you have to kind of really know your market. So that's why I'd say it's all about testing early on, right? So making sure that you're testing different buckets of potential consumers and figuring out what are the responses to each of these kind of buckets, right? What type of messaging is resonating with each one? What type of pain points that we're talking about are messaging with resonating, with each one? And once we kind of boil that down, then I believe we'll have a broader sense of, okay, this is actually a viable market that I can tap into. And don't get me wrong, achieving PMF is not something that's going to happen immediately. It's something that takes like a very, very long time in some cases. In some cases, it can be very quick. It just depends on the issue that you're trying to solve, as well as, the receptiveness of the market to adopt a solution.
Understood. Understood. So, Ryan, after training thousands of students, right, and you have which got placed in top-notch companies, right? What are the things that you think a company should put in their sales training program? Like top 5 things or top 10 things that you feel which are the most important things that a company should adopt for, and that you think that a lot of companies are missing those sales training programs in their training process.
Yeah. Look, where I think companies kind of miss the mark a lot is with respect to their ramp as well as with respect to their enablement, right? So I'll talk about ramp first. Look, ramp is usually 3 months for an SDR, right? And that basically means, for the uninitiated, that it takes 3 months for you to then start chasing 100% of target. Um, I believe that there can be done a lot more done rather to actually put the SDRs on a road to success where they're actually able to succeed in the long run. So I think that it all starts with, how you're going to train them, right? As soon as this guy comes through the door, he's a fresher, he's comes with experience, doesn't really matter. We have to kind of treat them as though, okay, they don't know this product at all. Let's first get them trained up on the product, right? Once they understand the product within the first 2 weeks, that's when we talk to them about how we sell it. I think it's also important that we don't sort of influence the way that they would naturally sell in some ways. I think the best thing that happened to me in two of the companies I worked in is that they didn't immediately say, this is how we have to sell it. They just gave me some product training and then they said, how would you sell it? Right. So then I was sort of able to use the creativity because look, oftentimes the people who are conducting these RAM programs within companies, they're not really able to, let's say, go beyond a level of product knowledge. And they're also looking too close to the problem, right? Somebody who's fresh to the organization has that fresh perspective. And if we kill that within the first 3 months, we're basically worse off for it, right? For lack of a better, words. But I have a feeling that, look, if most reps kind of adopt this mindset of, I'm going to have to go into this company and figure out the way that this product is going to have to be sold myself, they're going to be far more likely to actually succeed. And they're also bringing something new to the table and different, right? Now, additionally, I think something that companies can do well is that they haven't been doing well is, making sure enablement is at the top, of the priority list. If a rep is missing target for, let's say, 2 months in a quarter, it's very, very important that the first thing we do with that rep is further enablement and training, right? Sales cannot always be like a hire or fire thing. And credit to most of the SaaS companies that I do work with, they do have very, very good enablement programs in place where they don't sort of hire or fire. But we see it in a lot of other different industries. And it's simply a matter of understanding, look, where's this person going wrong? And chances are you can fix that in less than 30 minutes with them. That's what I've always seen, right? If I have a rep who's not hitting quota, within 30 minutes as a manager, I have to be able to diagnose the problem as well as prescribe a solution to him. Now, if this rep, for whatever reason, decides not to adopt whatever solution I prescribed, and they want to come up with their own solution, that's also fine, right? But if they come up with their own solution, doesn't work, then we try again. We go back to the drawing board. But the idea here would be, everything can be solved, I believe, with additional training and additional enablement. And I'm happier to see that a lot of SaaS companies are taking training, enablement, ramp, all of these things very, very seriously to the point where now my reps, they already know how to sell. Now they just need a bit of product knowledge. So it takes about 1 or 2 months max for, the reps that I'm, introducing to these organizations to suddenly start chasing 100% ramp target, which basically brings down the ramp period by about 33% at the very least.
Understood. So, Ryan, when we see a lot of growing companies who are in the growth stage, they struggle with this revenue leak. Possible reasons could be not proper follow-ups or any kind of reason, right? So, is there any kind of automation they can build to remove this kind of revenue leak in their sales operations?
Yeah, I think, look, you can track what you can't, you can't improve what you can track, right? At the end of the day, there are tons of reasons for different revenue leaks. But I believe, look, if it's down to something as simple as people are not following up enough, you can create automated sequences for that through pretty much any SCP, where you can just automate something that, follows up with the prospect, for example, right? We all have access to a calendar like Google Calendar. Why not put a reminder there for yourself as well? So I think a lot of these things are very, very simple problems to solve. But actually getting reps to do this or actually getting an organization to do this can be a little bit challenging at times. But at the end of the day, the solutions are quite simple for these sort of revenue leaks.
Understood. So my last question to you is, top 3 books that Ryan should suggest to every student who is trying to enter into sales that you feel a must have book for every person.
Yeah, I think the first one is, and in fact, I'm looking at it right now. It's on my bed over there. It's called Never Split the Difference. It's by Chris Voss and Tal Raz. Absolutely fantastic book. I think that's something where you'll really understand not only how to negotiate with other people, but how to negotiate with yourself. And I think that's also an important negotiation that each of us enter into on a daily basis, right? Whether it's something as simple as should I go to the gym or should I not, you're still negotiating with yourself at the end of the day, right? So I think that that's really, really important that a lot of people can and should ideally read. Another one is How to Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. It breaks down sales in a more complex way, let's put it, where people have different frames, right? And it's about gaining control of the frame so that you're able to, of course, go ahead and maybe cater to this person, for example, an analytical person. How do you, sell to a person who has an analytical frame of mind, right? So this book sort of teaches that. So it's based on also your perception to analyze, okay, is this person actually somebody who is very, very, you know, analytical? Is this somebody who's very, very creative? Is this some person who's very, very structured or, you know, methodical, whatever it may be, right? And there are many different, you know, I think there's 7 different frames that, you know, he teaches in that book. So that was a lot of help to me as well. Again, it was a kind of a complex book. It did take me 2 or 3 readings to get the entire message out from it. And I still like to listen to it when I'm in the car today. The last one, I know a lot of people, and this might be a little bit controversial, I know a lot of people don't like this person, but I do like his energy. I like Grant Cardone. He has this book called Sell or Resold, right? Is Sell or Resold even by him? One sec, let me just check. Be Sold. Yeah, it is by Grant Cardone. And that's a fantastic book. I like the way that he breaks down these very, very simple selling concepts, and he makes it so that anybody can understand it, right? I think it's like a polar opposite to the Orenclaff book, but Seller Resold is an absolutely fantastic book as well. And look, there's a lot of great sales leaders as well that I look up to. For example, there's one called Josh Braun. He's on LinkedIn, very, very big on LinkedIn, absolutely fantastic. Another one is Tom Slocum, very good friend of mine, somebody who I look up to a lot. And I believe with people in India as well over here who are excellent at what they do. People like Anupreet Singh, people like Prakhar Jain, people like Rahul, really, really top class people at the top of their industries. And they're really, really great at what they do. And they're homegrown talent. They're people that we can learn from and aspire to be like as well. So yeah, even though they haven't written a book, maybe I believe that there's still a lot we can learn from them by just maybe following people like that on LinkedIn.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ryan, for giving us your time. It's really amazing to talk to you, and you have given us a lot of insights about the industry and the upcoming trends in the sales as well. I wish you all the best for your School of SDR, and I hope you keep helping people like me to get into sales and industry. So yeah, thank you so much, and
yeah, absolutely. I think one last thing to add would be, look, in case any of the things that we've discussed in this podcast are resonating with you at all, in case you want to have a chat with me, feel free to head over to the website, schoolofsdr.com. Feel free to book a chat with me. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that I'm able to get people into the jobs of their dreams, able to make sure that they're making good money and able to really, impact the way that they start selling, whether it be in SaaS or whether it be outside.
Cool. Sure. I will just drop your website link in my description. So people who want to get into Samaschool, just go to their website and book a consultation call with Ryan.
The School of SDR. Samaschool is not there anymore.
I'm so sorry. School of SDR. Yeah. Cool.
Not a problem, man. Not a problem. I think people just see my face and they're just like, Ryan Sama. We got to change that, but that's the 2025 problem.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you so much, Ryan, once again.